hope you're doing well. Today I want to finally start painting with this palette because of course I've been putting all the colors together, considering carefully what colors I really want to have in my botanical palette. However, the most fun part of this is of course the painting. So I cannot wait. I will be honest, I have filmed all day long today and I actually am quite tired, so I was thinking to just like have a little break, but I am too excited and I cannot wait any longer. So with all the swatches and the experimentation that we have done in the previous weeks, it is time now to take this palette for a little spin. So what I'm gonna do today is just show you how to be free with your palette. So after considering all of the colors carefully, after thinking about the mixes I can create, what happens next? Next, you just need to let go. So with the colors that you have, how about we just mix everything that comes to mind? So what I mean by that is we don't need to be careful and just consider one or two colors. These are very helpful to play around and create some unique mixes. But once in a while, it is important to let go. When it comes to watercolor, to stay inspired, to stay kind of feeling fresh and not do the same thing again and again and just keep repeating yourself. What you need to do is just have a playtime, and I think this is what we're going to do today. Let's start by, I really don't like these bottom palettes. They kind of always are at an angle. Well, this one at least doesn't fall down. There are some that completely fall down, which is also not great. This one is a bit at an angle, so it's quite difficult to get it in the frame sometimes. But anyways, let me just move my crystals into here. It's so funny, we're currently watching Breaking Bad, and I know it's been around for a while, but I first watched the Better Call Saul and then I started watching Breaking Bad, and currently there is this one character that's going through some sort of, well, he's going through a difficult time, and basically he then gets into crystals and everyone who meets him keeps calling them rocks, and he keeps like ordering more and more rocks. And I remember when I was getting into that as well, it's so funny how not everyone understands it, and they just call it rocks, and he sort of corrects them saying they are minerals. So yeah, okay, so let's see, let's think of a flower. What sort of flower? I'm thinking maybe a tulip. So let's go into my pinks. I've got a number of pinks here, and I'll just pick up colors that are in the palette. Okay, so I'm just going to create these kind of edges. I'm thinking of a tulip is what I'm thinking. But a loose one. Then I'm seeing a color mix here, so I'm just going to go into that a bit as well. Just drop some color wet into wet, and also a little bit throughout the petal. And then another petal. So generally these exercises you have to be in the right mind frame for it, because they might not come out very beautifully. This is when it's time to let go and kind of experiment. But if you are in the mood to be like everything has to be perfect and it has to come out looking neat, this might not be for that day. It is just to enjoy kind of dipping your brush into all sorts of different colors in here and just mixing different tones and just really playing around with it. So typically, let's think, how many petals does a tulip have? About 5 or 6. And so this is what I'm trying to mimic. Let's think. I did have a lovely transparent oxide, so that's gonna go straight in with a bit of this beautiful pink as well. Just let it flow back into my beautiful peach with a touch of permanent rose again. So if it's becoming too pinky, there's always an orange somewhere close by. So and then a little bit of this peach again. Now I have this lovely color, so I'm going to go in with that as well. And the final petal. I'm kind of thinking of these parrot type of tulips. Touch of pink again. Like so. Okay, I'll leave it at that. And kind of let's try and maybe add a bit of greenery, not too much. So we've got lovely options here. Hooker's green with whatever is left over here, and we're going to add a bit of Nicolaser yellow, and that's a juicy green. So the greens usually are quite green when it comes to tulips. So I'm just going to paint like a bent leaf. And then what you can do is you can just lift a little bit in the center for a tiny bit of a highlight. So that's our tulip. I think I'm gonna just stay with tulips. Feeling like tulips today. So this is this super bright orange. To it I'm going to add some Naftamide Maroon, which was it, this one? Yeah. So Naftamide Maroon and the orange create a very deep color. So I'm going to start with that. So that's a pretty beautiful color that we just mixed ourselves. And Maybe to add some diversity into it, what about we just go into this lovely shimmery color? So this must be the duochrome. Is it? No, it's not duochrome. This is something else. This is Autumn Mystery. That's quite pretty. And then going to take the petals to this side. Just changing the petals slightly up as I go. If the color is becoming less saturated, I can then go like this and at least darken up. Like, you know, some tulips have like a really almost black center. So that's this. And then let's this time mix up something a bit more muted. Let's go into this yellow ochre. And ultramarine turquoise. There's a bit much. Basically just carry on mixing until you get the color that you like. And this time, to make sure your brush is nice and wet, I'm just going to add a few leaves. So for this, it is good to have a brush that will kind of soak the watercolor and hold it in. And I'm going to add one more. Maybe coming out this way. Like that. Okay, so here I noticed there's a wide gap there, so I'm just going to connect that. If you're noticing that there's some patch of color sitting and creating a bit of a not very pretty edging, just go back and kind of pull the color through the entire thing. Okay, now let's think of a yellow, a nice yellow type of a tulip. Tiny bit of quinacridone gold into there, and that becomes a rich yellow. My parrot tulips didn't do very well this year. I had a few very small ones. They usually disappear for a few years and then they come back. Okay, you can't see anything what I'm doing here. So let me just move things a little bit. This should be a bit better now. So, petal number 4. And then last one. Now back into quinacridone gold and see if anything is still wet. I'm just going to dip it into the tip of the petal. And what you can also do with water control, just kind of take it out a bit, soften it. That's another look to go for. And let's see. So with this, a nice yellow green would do really, really nicely. So for that, I'm going to go into green gold and add a touch of quinacridone gold, like that. So this time I'm going to use this space right here. So you need to make sure there's enough watercolor. If you are pulling through your brush on the paper and you can see it's going matte straight away, meaning that that is it, it's going to dry, it means that it's not enough. And usually those washes end up a little bit dull once they dry. So make sure they're glistening when they hit the paper. So here I'm going to go with one of those type of leaves. So here you can see it's too dry. I'm going in and adding a touch more. Okay. And then maybe, let's see, like a pinky one. So permanent pink is a good color for that. Let's see, I'm gonna go into here. Let me know in the comments, do you like a nice messy palette or nice and clean? I can tell you that from my own experience, when I first started with watercolor, I liked it clean. I remember some of my viewers were commenting that, oh my gosh, I've never seen such a pristine and clean palette. And I really enjoyed kind of not having colors contaminated, every color really clean, because it would annoy me if I had to dip into the color knowing that I needed to be that specific tone to mix with, for example, or paint with straight as it is, and it wouldn't be, then it, you know, it'd have to go around and kind of go around in circles and try to mix that color. These days I definitely enjoy kind of contaminating them a little bit and mixing as I go. So things do change in our watercolor journeys. I wonder which one it is for you. Oh goodness, I'm so sorry about some silly person beeping. I want a little bit more green in there, a bit more zest. So I'm going to go into this color and green it up a bit. Now, if it's too green, the best thing to do is to go for a touch of pink. I think this is alizarin crimson if I'm not mistaken, and add it into your green, and immediately you're taking off that edge when it's sort of, you know, not a very pleasant green, let's call it that way. Neutralizing it is a good thing to do. So again, if I can see, it's not enough. I like using this size of a brush, which is around 4, but to keep more water in, it'd be a good idea to have a bigger size brush, maybe go up to a 6. Now let's try and cross them over, making one a bit longer. So this green is a little bit standing out, but then it kind of works with the pink. Okay, one more tulip. Thinking, let's go for an orange. So I've got some lovely orange here, which is the transparent pyrrole orange, but not necessarily do I like it straight out. So I will go straight out of the pan. I'm going to add transparent red oxide into it, which not only will neutralize it, but also add some beautiful granulation. So let's go with that color here for our final tulip. So we should see some beautiful watercolor magic happening. And also I want to pop some additional color into the center here as well. And I'm thinking something possibly quite dark again. So making sure things are wet, I'm just going to add little puddles like so. And let's see, I'll go into this color here and see what happens. I think this might be alizarin crimson. So quickly I wanted to show you that, for example, if you want to mix and match styles and you don't aim for realistic or traditional, then what you can do is mix and match things that you like. So for example, personally, I don't really like how the tulip looks with the greenery like so. So what I can do is I can create my own leaves, and that immediately will take it to more of a contemporary style. So I mix up the color that I like, and then I can, for example, just add little leaves here and there. So I don't really have enough space here for that many kind of leaves. But even coming out straight out of the flower and being inspired by the shape of the leaf, you can do your own thing. So it doesn't have to be just, you know, as the flower grows. You can create your own reality when it comes to contemporary botanical art. And I think this is quite the fun part of it. So that, and then maybe like a little green. So we're creating like a floral cluster with all the leafage. So that looks quite pretty. So there you go. I basically took away this part and just used the leaves and created a little fun element to it. Like I said, I don't have enough space here to work on, so I could build more of a cluster. So once that is all done, it's important to let it all wait, and then we're going to add just final touches to it. So for a very easy way of creating a center of a flower, which I already showed you in the previous tutorial when we've done these peonies. So to create the center of the flower and to make it really pop, a good art supply to use would be gouache. So I quite like either the Holbein acrylic gouache or Winsor & Newton designer gouache. Basically, all I need to do is, I mean, you could, mix your own colors, but this is going to be as simple as it gets. With gouache, I like to use like a flat type of a brush. I'm going to go for this one, which is Pure Sable one, and it's Jackson's brush. So minimal water, because for me I like the opacity of the gouache. Obviously the more water you use, it starts to resemble watercolor and you get that transparency. I don't need that, I need opacity. So when the consistency appears to be right, you just go in and create that kind of center of it. And remember, I'm using a flat kind of oval tip, so like a filbert type of a brush. So it's really easy to do it with. And I'm just placing it right in the center where it had the white paper. Like so. It will pop on darker backgrounds. Just adding 3 little scallop shapes to them. If you look at the botanical images or the photography, you'll see that. And then last one here. So let it dry, and then we might need, for full opacity, come over it and do it one more time. Let's build up the pigment on our brush, and we're going to go over it second time, like so. There we go. And then, of course, for the seeds, or for the little kind of pollen bits, I don't know what they're called in tulips, what I will need to do is use like a thin liner brush, and then I'll just show you if I get a little bit of Payne's Grey. Let's start with this amount, and we're going to rotate the brush and kind of try to soak up this pigment, and you can see it's like a thin line. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw thin lines like that. I mean, I'm not really counting them, usually there is loads of them, so just, go to town, however many you think you would like to have in there, and you can leave it at that. You can also, let's do it on this yellow one, you'll see it better. You can create shorter lines and then add to them. So I'll show you a look. Basically, for this part you'll need a really small brush, and I'll go for something like a 2-0 back into this super saturated mix. It really needs to be quite black. It's not a black, it's a grey, but I use it in place of black. And then I'm going to touch and leave it. Touch and lift. Touch and lift. And they kind of need to be long shapes, and you can just pull them out. A bit tapered out, they usually are. This is a stylistic choice because, you know, I just like how it looks, but it might not be very realistic to some. But like I said, this is not realistic, this is just fun. And of course it pops beautifully over a yellow. So one more here, because it looks like we need one more. There we go. So there's different ways of doing it. You could leave it like that black, or to be honest with you, I like it a lot more. I think it just looks immediately like a tulip. Never mind what the petals look like, but as soon as you add this detail, it is definitely a tulip now. So study a tulip if you have, well, it's too late for tulips now, but find some pictures online and study what they look like. Up close. And you can change up the shape of these pollen bits. Very technical name, but it looks so pretty. So I'm gonna leave it at this, and then later in my own time I actually need to go get Mason from school soon. But yeah, this is a fun little detail you can add. And you can, I mean, technically you can keep it strictly watercolor if you really wanted to, if you didn't want to use gouache, or if you don't have gouache, but I prefer it this way.